This is the second day of this September 2025 7-day sesshin. Yesterday we covered some biographical material on the great Zen Master Hakuin from the book The Essential Teachings of Zen Master Hakuin, translated by Norman Waddell. And today we're going to turn to one of the texts in this collection, which is organized into 5 chapters. And taken together, Waddell says, they express Hakuin's vision for authentic Zen practice, which at the time had been on the decline for many years. We'll start with the first chapter. It's titled, Licking Up Shikang's Fox Slobber. I won't read it in its entirety, word for word, because it contains a lot of details, more than we need to hear, especially the names of various people and places. It kind of makes it tedious to read aloud. All right, so Hakuin begins. Long ago, the Zen priest Yuan Wu delivered a series of lectures in which he commented on the 100 cases of the Blue Cliff Record, which is the Hekigan-roku in Japanese. A fellow priest sent him a letter of reproach, using a tone of language harsher than one would expect from one's own flesh and blood. But Yuan Wu realized the justness of the criticism and ceased from writing such commentaries. This ought to be a valuable lesson for us all. So let's stop here for a moment. So Yuan Wu is or was the compiler of the Blue Cliff Record. So why would he be harshly criticized for commenting on the koans that appear in it? And why did he come to agree with this criticism as a valuable lesson for us all? There's an old Zen proverb. Words miss the mark. Even the Dharma, even the teachings, the sutras that have been passed down, even the words of the Buddha are of no use. They're removed from direct experience. How can one put this right here, now? How can one put this into words? These 7 days of sesshin in which we practice in silence gives us a rare chance to get underneath words, underneath thoughts. And go directly to the source. Hakuin then says, "So, why am I about to commence licking up all the fox slobber that priest Shi Kang spewed and left behind him in those 10 temples where he served? Why am I about to brazenly ascend the high seat, clutching a hosu in my hand to diminish the dignity of an entire hall full of senior priests?" For those of you who don't know, hosu is a horsehair whisk. It's basically a wooden staff with horsehair spilling out from the top of it. Originally, it had a practical purpose. It was used by teachers to gently shoo away insects without harming them. But over time, it came to be seen as symbolic, a symbolic accoutrement of the teacher and the teacher's authority to transmit the Buddha Dharma. And so here we have Hakuin, hosu in hand, licking up all of Shi Kang's fox slobber. Shi Kang is a nickname for the Chinese master Shu Ti Ang Shiyu, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. But this Shi Kang is from the same lineage as Hakuin. So he's someone that Hakuin regarded highly and as a great teacher. So when Hakuin says he's about to lick up all of his fox slobber, we can't take that to necessarily be an insult. Licking up fox slobber can have more than one meaning. And Hakuin himself was known to use it in at least two ways. One as a rebuke to those who taught or practiced inauthentic Zen, which we heard about yesterday. But also in a playful, kind of sly way for Hakuin to accuse a fellow master of spewing fox slobber is also a compliment. It's a statement of high praise. The context matters. And after all, Hakuin himself, here he is taking the high seat, about to plate up and serve fox slobber. He continues, "I was blown by the winds of karma to this broken down old temple. I have remained here without disciples for the past 20 years. In that time, I have been visited by students from all corners of the land, asking me to give them talks and lectures on sutras and Zen writings. Some of them brought me rosters bearing names of hundreds of students. Others submitted their requests in elaborate compositions that were 20 or 30 lines long. Altogether, this must have happened at least 30 times. I can't tell you how it has interfered with my sleep. So he's critiquing the over-reliance on talks and lectures, not just words on a page. So that includes teishos and encouragement talks. No matter whose mouth they happen to come out of. It's not a substitute for active, direct looking. No one can do this work for us. And as for talks of various kinds, they can give us inspiration and really help when we're feeling discouraged or stuck. But it does come at a risk of clinging to whatever is read or said. So if you find yourself rehashing over words spoken in the zendo or in the doksan room, basically playing over in your mind something that was said in the past that is long gone, notice that. It falls upon you to forget it. Let it go. Hakuin goes on to describe the rows of students that came to see him. He says, a few of the students burned with genuine zeal and determination. They made the rounds of Zen teachers, asking them to intervene with me on their behalf. They went to lay followers, complaining of my intransigence, that is his strong will. I saw how strongly they were committed to achieving their goal. I wanted to do what I could to respond to their needs. But my temple is extremely poor. The kitchen shelves are bare. From the far north of the country to the far south, I don't suppose a single soul could be unaware of the poverty here at Shoinji. At the same time, I am deeply concerned about the sharp decline in Buddhist practice in recent years and the sad decay of the Dharma. When he speaks of poverty, we can actually understand it in more than one way. There is the poverty of barely being able to sustain the temple or oneself in terms of finances, food, and whatnot. And the simple living that comes with that. But there's another kind of poverty. And that's the poverty of not holding on to anything. Being free of attachments. Losing. Not gaining. Losing everything. Now Hakuin continues. The young generation of monks are a pack of misfits. Irresponsible and ungovernable rascals. When they first come to me, I cannot help loving them for their quiet, unassuming manner. My head bows before their sincere devotion and firm resolve. I think they are genuine monks, determined to break through to enlightenment. Their thoughts are firmly fixed on the great matter of birth and death. But before even a month is up, they turn from the exemplary norms and customs of the past as they would from dirt. The time-honored temple regulations mean no more to them than lumps of dry mud. They band together in groups and run roughshod through the temple, roaming the garden and corridors, shouting out to one another in loud voices, loitering in passageways, singing and humming. They pay no attention to what their superiors tell them. Senior priests and temple masters are powerless to restrain them. Then there's more. They cut the bucket rope at the wall. They lift the temple bell from its moorings and turn it upside down. They push over the big temple drum. Whenever they get the chance, they sneak out the front gate. They slink furtively back in at night through openings they have burrowed in the temple wall. They gather in front of the main hall, capering about and singing shameless tunes they pick up in town. They swarm over the hill in back of the temple like ants, disturbing others with their wild clapping and horsing around. They prop sharp sickles up in dark corridors where the unsuspecting will walk into them. Stack big water jars in passageways where people will be sure to knock them over. They crack the floor planks over the privy so that when men squat on them, they will tumble into the pit filth. They plague the kitchen monks by dousing the firewood with water so it can't be used to light the ovens in the morning. They make the rounds of the local tea houses and wine shops, gleefully abandoning themselves to base amusements. To put this in context, this was part of a period where, at least in the Rinzai tradition, there was a deep felt need to get back to the roots. Some temples and monasteries were struggling to survive. There was waning support. And there was also competition among the various temples and schools and branches of Zen. People had choices, just like they do today. It was Hakuin's belief that authentic practice required rigor and discipline and ongoing practice. No end to it. At our center, although it's not a monastery in any way, we do try to maintain a structured atmosphere that challenges us and motivates us, all of us. It's not always easy when trying to balance family, relationships, all different kinds of responsibilities one might have. But the Buddha taught that practice is what prepares us to be in the world, to be in the marketplace. With open hearts and open hands. But the scene that Hakuin is describing is of monks who are lazy, who lack discipline. They're complacent, insincere, inconsiderate of others, careless, not respecting the monastic rules, getting all too easily distracted. Does that sound familiar? If we flash forward to today, if you spent any time in Zen residential training, chances are you're going to run into a modern version of this. If you put a bunch of people together from different ages and backgrounds, living, working, sitting in the same space, it's bound to happen that there are going to be issues with this person or that person doing something distracting or careless. using a cell phone at a time and in a space that's intrusive for others. Whistling while washing the dishes or raking the leaves. Not picking up after yourself. Leaving traces. Crumbs, dirty dishes. And one can also slack off in the practice by doing the bare minimum. For instance, never sitting outside of what's required, only doing the formal sittings. That can have an effect on morale, not just on your own practice, but other people's practice. Especially if it's habitual. When we have shared rules that we follow and we embrace together, it's in the interest of everyone's practice, not just our own. And it helps us when we receive feedback, receive it with grace. It helps us to be accountable to ourselves and to others. Hakuin goes on. While there could be 1,000 people inside the temple devoting themselves to their training with untiring zeal, because they do not venture outside the gates for the entire retreat, no one knows of their illustrious achievements. The rowdy miscreants haunting the town streets, engrossed in unsavory pastimes, may be no more than 2 or 3 in number. Okay, so he's not lumping them all together. But since it all takes place in broad daylight for everyone to see, their sins become known to all. Because of the mindless and irresponsible actions of a handful of monks, tens of thousands of their fellows must share their notoriety. Jades are cast into the furnace along with ordinary stones. Gold and steel are melted into one common lump. Buddhist monks have come to be despised by good lay people. Now they are as welcome as a shit-covered pig or a mangy dog with running sores. People in the streets condemn them. Even the masterless samurai talk of their flagrant misdeeds. Even the masterless samurai. Masterless samurai is basically a warrior who no longer has a master, who no longer serves a master. And that might be because the master passed away, or that the samurai engaged in some kind of disgraceful behavior. So he was released from service. So masterless samurai were often regarded with suspicion. Even they talk of the flagrant misdeeds of these miscreant monks. He continues, "It is deplorable the harm these monks do. In one moment, the dignity and authority of the Buddha's way is lost. The radiance of the Dharma teaching snuffed out. A troop of demons, 8,000 strong, will swoop down and sweep all trace of them from the face of the earth. The Deva hosts will expunge their names from the sacred Dharma rosters." In case you haven't noticed, Hakuin has a very provocative style. And he was known for that, along with his sense of humor. And it had a lot of appeal. He had a way of connecting with people from all walks of life. Including peasants and commoners, villagers. And while it can sound like he's ranting or roasting the monks, trying to publicly shame them, what he's really trying to do is to propel them, to urge them to get serious. Get serious about practice. Get serious about genuine awakening. Light a fire under them. That's really what he's trying to do. It's so easy, isn't it, to adopt a kind of indifferent or passive, even dismissive attitude about our practice, especially if we're caught up in judging it and judging ourselves. What am I doing? Why bother? I've been at this for years. I keep going to sesshin. Nothing to get from it. And that's right. There is nothing to get. It's true that we are Buddha from the very beginning. There's nothing that you have to prove to other people or yourself. You're already a Buddha. until we purify the mind continuously, till we experience it directly. We can't say that we know it in our flesh and blood. We know it as a belief. We know it through our faith. But we need to authenticate it. Yesterday, I told a story about Hakuin and a young woman from his village. There's another story that's often attributed to him, and this other one that I'm going to share involves an exchange with a samurai warrior. This warrior came to Hakuin for guidance and asked him, "Is there really a heaven and a hell? Is there really a heaven and a hell?" If we can read between the lines, we might see that this samurai warrior was a bit concerned about where he might end up. Who knows what atrocities he committed prior to asking Hakuin this question. Is there really a heaven and a hell? And Hakuin replied, "Who are you?" "I am a samurai," the warrior said proudly. "You? A samurai?" exclaimed Hakuin. "Ha! What kind of ruler would have you as his guard? You look more like a beggar." Well, this got the warrior very angry. And he instinctively, as he had been trained, began to draw his sword. And yet Hakuin continued to chide him. "So, you have a sword. Your weapon is probably as dull as your head." And just at the moment that he drew his sword, Hakuin said, Here! Now open the gates of hell." And at those words, the samurai understood. He understood what Hakuin was teaching him. And he put his sword back in its sheath and bowed. Upon which Hakuin said, "Here, now open the gates of heaven." Of course, what he was teaching him is that how we experience life, how we experience reality, is not a product of external forces bearing down on us, but internal. It's a product of how we use and misuse our mind. How near the truth, yet how far we seek. Getting back to the text, Hakuin's critique of the state of Zen at the time goes on actually for several more paragraphs. And I'll spare you of that. But it includes criticism of teachers that had been refusing to accept students just in order to avoid having to deal with troublemakers, and also to protect their reputation. Because the perception apparently was that how the student behaved was a reflection of the teacher. And Hakuin says that it was under these circumstances that monks started to flock to him for guidance, because other teachers were not accepting them. He says, I can't come up with an excuse to turn them away. I don't have the strength to keep pushing them off. I find myself pinched into a tight corner, all avenues of escape cut off. And however hard I scrutinize my life, I am unable to come up with any reputation that would need protecting. I haven't achieved anything noteworthy for others to esteem. I am ignorant of poetry. I don't understand Zen. I'm a lumpish and indolent a man as you could find. I drift idly along, doing only what pleases me. I sleep and snore to my heart's content. No sooner do I wake up than I'm nodding off again, like a rice pounder deep in daydreams. You won't discover much resemblance between me and a real Zen teacher, not one trait for younger monks to emulate. No one is more keenly aware of this than I am. I view these defects of mine with constant loathing, but I don't know what to do about them. I'm afraid I'm a lost cause. So now we have the great Hakuin characterizing himself as essentially good for nothing. Beneath all those strong words, humble, unpretentious, down to earth, self-deprecation. Going on and on about his deficiencies. This lumpish, indolent man at best. A teacher who has nothing to give, nothing to offer, because he knows his students have nothing to gain, nothing they need to fix, nothing they need to change. Nothing lacking. From the very beginning. We'll stop here and recite the 4 vows.